Welcome back. Let's now look at creating scaling rules. So a scaling rule defines specific scaling actions, that is, how many instances should be added to or removed from the scaling group. If, as a result of executing a scaling rule, the number of ECS instances in a scaling group is less than the min size value or greater than the max size value, autoscaling automatically adjusts the number of instances to be added or removed. For example, let's say a scaling group is created with a max size of 3, a total capacity that's currently at 2, and a scaling rule that's set to add 3 more instances. In this case, autoscaling only adds 1 instance. Why is that? Well, the current capacity of the group is 2. There's already 2 instances in the group. If we add 1 more ECS instance, we will be at the max size value that's set for the group. If we tried to add 3 instances to our existing 2, the group would contain 5 instances, which would exceed the max size value that's set for the group. As a result, when the scaling activity occurs, the autoscaling service only adds 1 more instance to bring us up to the group max size. Let's imagine a second scenario in which the min size is 2, the group currently contains 3 instances, and we have a scaling rule that's going to be set to remove 5 instances. There's 2 problems here. Number 1, there's only 3 instances in the group, so we cannot possibly remove 5. And number 2, if we removed all 3 of those instances, then the size of the group would be 0, which is less than the minimum size of 2. So all we can do is subtract or remove a single ECS, which will bring the size of the group down from 3 to 2, which is the minimum. You can modify, delete, or query scaling rules from the scaling rules page in the console. Let's take a look at how to do that now. We're now back in the console. Here's our scaling group. Let's take a look at the scaling group. So first I'll click on the scaling group ID, and we can see that in accordance with the minimum size value that we set, the group now contains 2 ECS instances. Previously, when we were looking at the console after just enabling the group, this value was still 0. It did take some time for the group to get up to the minimum size, but it did that automatically while we were off looking at the slides. So now what we want to do is set up some scaling rules. So let's do that. So I'll click on the Scaling Rules tab here, and we can begin to define some rules. I'm going to create 2. I'll create 1 rule to add instances and 1 more rule to remove them. So let's create a scaling rule called Scale Up To. His job is to scale the size of the group by 2 instances. I won't give him a scheduled time. What I will do is I'll leave this scheduling for later when I set up scaling activities. For now, I'll just say we want to add 2 instances, and the warm-up time before those instances go live and are considered healthy, we'll set it to 60 seconds. You can choose a longer time if your instances need more time to finish post-boot configuration, and we will call this a simple scaling rule, actually, so we should choose simple scaling rule, and we'll add 2 instances, and we'll give the cooldown time here actually for adding or removing the instances. We'll set that to, let's say, 2 minutes, 120 seconds. So scale up to. Rather than predictive target tracking or step, we'll use what we call a simple scaling rule. A simple scaling rule simply carries out an add or remove operation when it is triggered by a scheduled task or an event-triggered task. So whenever this rule is triggered, it will add 2 instances to the group, and it will wait 120 seconds before proceeding to add or remove additional instances. Okay, we've now set that up. Let's click Create Scaling Rule again, and we'll create another simple scaling rule that will scale down. We'll call it Scale Down To, and its job is to remove 2 instances from the group, again with a cooldown of 120 seconds, and we'll click OK. So we've now got these 2 rules set up here. That's all we needed to do to set them up. If we want, we can manually execute them by clicking on Execute, or we can delete them or edit their configuration. If I click on Edit, I can change the quantities and the name here. And that's it for this section. In the next section of the course, we'll look at manual scaling operations.